ADHD and self-reliance. Stand on your own feet. Be independent. Good parents help their children become independent. This was during my college years. At that time, my dad would call me at night after drinking and vent his complaints, making me feel miserable. One of my professors, who was a little eccentric but had a good heart, would personally meet with students in his class. I was in a meeting with him when my dad called again, but I didn't answer and instead confided in the professor. He empathized deeply with me and told me to stand on your own feet. Hearing those words, I knew what I needed to do. However, it didn't mean that I, who have been a dependent member of my family, suddenly became independent and stood on my own 2 feet. It took a few years after that for me to stand on my own 2 feet. My dad demanded that I should pass the bar exam by the time he wanted, and with my depleted mental state and ADHD, I was dozing off in class all the time. There was no way I could do it. Plus, he cut off all financial support for me before I even graduated, and I was left with no degree, no money, and no place to go. I prayed and struggled through that time of poverty and hardship, and eventually managed to stand on my own 2 feet by finding a job and becoming financially independent. It took me 2 years. From the beginnings, the parents who consider their children's independence and provide them with the mental and financial freedom to live as they please after the age of 20 are entirely different from those who control and interfere with everything and raise their children to be dependent. Anyway, during that painful time, I persevered with the goal of becoming self-reliant and breaking free from financial dependence on my parents. I endured with the sole intention of achieving independence. Independence isn't just about financial independence, but also about emotional independence, which can be even harder to achieve than financial independence. In my opinion, I didn't achieve emotional independence until I was almost 40. Growing up, I was neglected and had ADHD, so I lacked the ability to take care of myself. My parents were also codependent on each other and on their children, and they didn't like the idea of their children living independently, so they constantly interfered in my life until I put up a barrier. I instantly knew that I was different from others and I felt weak inside. I also instantly knew that I had a superior intellectual ability that others didn't possess. Therefore, I unconsciously thought that if I gave what I had to others, they would help me with what I couldn't do, which made relationships uncomfortable. This was the way our family interacted with each other. In order to achieve psychological independence, I received cognitive-based counseling for a year when I was 30 years old, and psychoanalyst-based counseling for over 2 years when I was 30 years old. However, I still couldn't find a foundation to stand on by myself. At that time, my chronic depression from childhood became so severe that I couldn't even take care of myself or eat properly and felt anxious, scared, and unable to do anything. It was a difficult journey, but I eventually found my way to psychiatric clinic on my own and discovered that I had ADHD and depression. After receiving appropriate medication for my hormonal imbalance, I was able to take care of myself and achieve independence without relying on others. It's fortunate that ADHD and depression are illnesses related to hormone imbalance in the brain because taking medication can help me become more self-sufficient. Due to my weak ability to regulate myself with ADHD, taking medication has allowed me to eat meals at proper times, exercise regularly, wake up on time to take care of my daily life, and earn a salary as a freelancer. However, even with all these ability, it would be useless if I couldn't manage my daily life. People on their 20s are too young and need an organization to hold them back. Compared to others who was properly raised, disciplined, taught, and loved by their parents, and who was already mentally mature enough, I was too much hated by the organization because I was just intelligent child with too big a difference. I received a lot of hate in the organization because of this. I couldn't function properly in the organization either, as people found my dependence on them burdensome. It wasn't until I reached my 40s and finally realized that I had ADHD that I was able to achieve financial and mental independence thanks to medication. The journey was incredibly difficult. If only I had been able to take medication and take care of myself as a child, like my friends with other types of depression, and gone to hospital instead of relying on the church in my 20s, how much better would have been. I couldn't objectively see myself, so I couldn't even imagine that my brain structure was different from that of a typical person causing ADHD. I still have more days to live than the days I've already lived. Now I feel like I can live independently, peacefully, and happily without relying on anyone. I am so grateful for the medication, and I finally found happiness. I can now support myself in every way.